Hello everybody, Gregg Sueur, online tennis instruction. A very common problem we see on the serve is players who have what we call an open racket face. Now you may have heard this referred to as the waiter's tray or the pancake serve, and that's basically where the palm of the hand and the string face are pointing upwards as the racket moves over the head when completing the important right to left. Now we see this problem in our live clinics and also when players send in videos for review. And I'm going to show you the very specific step-by-step progressions I've used in live clinics to help students overcome this problem. So I'm going to show you a 3-part video series, a case study of a student named Sean who recently attended a clinic, and I took her through very similar progressions, and we'll show you the amazing transformation which she was able to make. So here's her serve at the beginning of the clinic, and you can see how the racket tip points all the way back and then the palm of her hand are pointing upwards. Now when you get in that position, it puts a lot of stress on the shoulder, plus it makes it very difficult to get into the racket drop position, and most importantly to get there safely without putting too much stress on the shoulder. Now as she swings up to contact, you'll see how the racket face is pointing straight up. This also imparts underspin on the ball, causing the ball to float, making it very difficult to gain control when she accelerates the racket. Now if you look at her serve after the clinic, you can see she's made a grip adjustment, but most importantly, when she completes her right to left, that's when the racket moves from the right side of her body to the left, the palm of her hands and her strings are angled downwards. This then leads to a massive improvement to her racket drop. Now we'll see how she continues to lead with the edge as she swings up to contact and then pronates. Now when you work on the arm action, it's very difficult to add the legs simultaneously. So once she gets this nailed down, then she can certainly work on adding the legs and using the body more. Now it's important to remember that even though she's able to demonstrate this with the ball correctly, it is going to take a lot of repetitions and practice for this to become automatic, where she can develop that effortless power. Now understanding why you may struggle with an open racket face, and it's quite simple. So when you start to play tennis, what makes the most logical sense is to hold the racket more like a forehand grip, to place the racket here, toss the ball up, point the strings towards the ball, and swing towards your target. That gets the ball in play. But then what starts to happen is you start to improve, and then you develop more of an advanced serve. You stand sideways, you may adjust the grip, you work on the right to left where you're closing the racket, but your brain wants to revert back to what gets the ball in. So you can do all these things, but then somewhere along the line, you want to point the strings towards the ball, and this happens too early on in the swing, resulting in that open racket face. So it's so important that when you work on the right to left and closing the racket, that you also work on coming up on edge. We lead with the edge of the racket and really delay the pronation. That's going to help to keep the racket strings angled slightly downward as you complete the right to left. So let's take a look at the drills you can do to help you to lead with the edge and ultimately help you to finally fix that open racket face. Now before we did any drills with Sean, we first addressed her grip issue, where she had more of a forehand grip. So we made an adjustment where we moved her grip towards grip number 2, or continental. Now some players, it's easier to make an intermediary change where you place the 2 reference points, the base, the knuckle of the index finger and the heel pad on this ridge 2.5. You find that's an easier transition, and then over time you move it all the way over to grip number 2. So that's one way you can work around it. But making a grip change can be difficult, but again, to develop good fundamentals on your serve, it is essential. All right, so here we have Sean going through the drill. She's choked up on the racket, and her racket tip is pointing down in the racket drop position. She's going to toss the ball up. You'll see how she's going to lead with the edge. She's going to then pronate up to contact. After she contacts the ball, she's going to continue to rotate through the shoulder. We'll see how the racket strings start to point to the right. That's also really critical to developing serve power. All right, so key things when you're completing that drill. Firstly, when you're swinging up to contact, when you get to about this point, and sometimes it helps players to think that they're not pronating until they can see their hand. But you want to lead with the edge, and when you get to about this point here where the racket is parallel to the ground, you want to think of rotating from the shoulder and the forearm. Okay, so you internally rotate the shoulder and pronate from the forearm right here. A lot of people mistakenly think it's just the forearm, they put too much stress over here, or they think it's simply a wrist snap, and that's going to be a recipe for disaster. So you want to be thinking you're rotating through the shoulder and the forearm to contact. Now after contact, you want to relax the shoulder and finish in this position. Now if you find that too much stress in the body, don't worry about turning out too much, but you can also finish down here. And the key thing you want to look for is that your strings are facing your knee. That means that you've continued to rotate through the shoulder, forearm towards the end, right? If you're finishing like this, where the strings are pointing away from you, you know that you haven't really pronated. Okay, so in the drill there, you want to start like this in your racket drop position. Okay, now you'll see how the strings are facing my back. Now, if you have speed and momentum, the racket would look more like this. Now, because we're starting from this position with no momentum, it's going to look like this, where the strings face your back. It's not touching your back, very important. It's away from the back. And I've choked up for a reason, because if you snap the wrist, do this incorrectly, the butt cap will hit you in the arm and give you that instant feedback. So we choked up, butt cap is up. You got to lead with the edge of the racket. Again, some people help to think when they see their hand, that's when they can start to rotate through the shoulder and the forearm to contact. From here, you then relax and finish this way, or you can continue all the way down, just take more stress off the shoulder and the elbow. So you start in this position, toss the ball up, come up on edge, pronate this way. Okay, and I'll show you the other version. And you can check to see the strings are facing your knee. That's really, really critical. Now let's take a look at that in slow motion. Also note, after release the ball, notice how the elbow is leading, and then the arm extends, and then we see that rotation through the shoulder and the forearm. Now, if you find that you do struggle with really holding that edge, delaying the pronation, some good progressions you can go through is you can simply bounce the ball in the racket. Now, most people bounce the ball like this, but you can then try to kind of slice the ball like this, where you catch it really thin, almost like you're taking a grater to the ball and grating the fuzz off the ball. So you can start like this, we just simply bounce it and catch it. You're trying to cut the ball there, catching it nice and thinly. And you can eventually do a couple of these in succession, right? Once you've done that, then I want you to look at the ball and think of it being like a clock face. We have 12 o'clock at the top. If you're right-handed, we've got 3 o'clock. Left-handed, you've got 9 o'clock. And this is a bit of an exaggeration, but when you're swinging up on edge, you can almost think, if you're right-handed, that you're grazing the right side of the ball at 3 o'clock, and make sure you're still swinging up as you do so. All right, but that's an exaggeration. You may get a lot of slice, but it's really going to help you to hold that edge longer. So let me just demonstrate one here. So got a lot more slice on that. But that's a really good way to help you to hold that edge if you're struggling with this drill where you still lead with that open racket face. All right, so once Sean was able to execute this drill consistently, we then moved on to working on her right to left. But that concludes today's video. I would like for you to complete today's drill. Please post your comments and questions, and I look forward to getting back to you. And make sure you check out the next 2 videos where we complete the rest of the series.